Hello, welcome to this podcast on psychotherapy in a new paradigm. We're going to be discussing transforming trauma, energy psychotherapy training, and with me to uncover this broad topic is Ruthie Smith. Ruthie, you can introduce yourself, but you're the author of a very recent book by Carmack. Energy, soul connecting, and awakening consciousness. I have to refer to my notes here. I should know it off by heart. Psychotherapy in a New Paradigm, released by Karmic Books 2024. And that's essentially what we're going to be talking about. So, Ruthie, really good to have you. Do you want to introduce yourself and a little about where you are and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Noel. Nice to meet you. And yes, I'm a psychoanalytic psychotherapist of 35 years or so. And I've always been interested in spirituality and in energy work. So over the years, I've had various strands to my bow because I'm also a musician. Um,
Which instrument?
and I play saxophone and I sing.
Oh,
So
right.
I've kind of been really interested in energy in different ways because, of course, music is a vibrational form, working with sound.
Of course.
Um, and I suppose I've also always been interested in trauma, just come from a background of really severe mental illness in my family, where both my mother and my sister were psychotic. So I was brought up with trauma, really. And I would say that, it was as though my mission were to try to understand it. And I was always trying to help my sister, who very, very sadly died in the end. She did take her own life. She was suffered from paranoid schizophrenia.
Okay.
And I think I had a kind of mission of really wanting to understand what causes such suffering. And that led me to seek both psychotherapy, where I got into psychoanalytic therapy, and on that side, I was quite lucky to go to the Arbors Association, where they had a really good understanding of mental illness as trauma, which was very unusual. I mean, it was in the days of Joe Burke and the sort of the idea that have you heard of great Gregory Bateson's double bind theory?
Yes.
The idea that the trauma that is at the root of things like schizophrenia is that you're put in a double bind where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you
Yeah.
don't. And so there's no way out. And I kind of learned that very early on in my career about this terrible dilemma where people get stuck and traumatized. And as well as studying psychoanalytic therapy and following that route, I also studied Tibetan Buddhism. And I was quite lucky, really, because I met very some of the really old masters, and I had an awakening experience through my first encounter with Buddhism when I went to hear this amazing teacher who talked about meditation and peace.
Hmm.
And I had a hugely opening experience of my heart, and I just cried literally for 4 hours afterwards. And I did really have that experience of peace and light in my body, and just that my body is one of light. And I suddenly realized, oh, that's who we really are. Because, when you grow up in a very traumatized family, you kind of, everyone thinks they're bad and there's loads of judgment and criticism and shame and so on, which is very, if you like, low vibration.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with um, Hawkins' scale of emotional vibrations? Have you come across it before?
Vaguely, yes. Is it linked to Alexander Lowen and
Uh,
Wilhelm Reich
uh,
originally?
no, it isn't, although it may well be. But basically, he did a scale of emotions and he worked out that things like shame and guilt resonate at 20 and 30 on a scale that goes from 0 to 1,000.
Hmm.
And Anger is about 100. Fear's 100 and anger's 150. Love doesn't come in there until 500. Uh, Joy at 560 and peace at 600 and enlightenment 700 and above.
Ah, right.
So if you think about a vibrational scale, and we are all vibrational beings because everything's energy, um, if we're on the floor with shame, then we haven't got much of a chance of being happy. And so what I experienced from this experience through this Buddhist master was peace. So I went
Mm.
way up and really experienced what my true nature. So as a therapist, it then sort of became my mission to find a way of bringing that into therapeutic work. So when we talk about psychotherapy in a new paradigm, we're really talking about helping to raise people's vibration so that instead of us bogged down in the dense energy of trauma and drama and misery, that we can help people to release all that trauma through these energy psychology methods within relational therapy. And as a result, people have an experience of themselves. They experience peace. And when people experience peace, they're not in their distressed nervous systems
And a
anymore.
new sort of emotional landscape opens up that's limitless, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's a really lovely way of putting it. And so, when I was a psychoanalytic therapist, all the the training was always talking about, oh, you've got to get into the anxiety and blah blah. And I thought, that doesn't sort of feel right. You know, I think I feel much better myself when I feel comfortable and safe. Whereas the actual method of psychoanalysis really encourages people to feel anxious. And I thought there's something not quite right here. Anyway, I kind of went with my friend for a laugh to visit this intuitive woman who was going to talk to my friend about her relationships. And I wasn't going for myself, but she kind of took a look at me and she said, "Come on, dear, let's have a look at you." And I thought she was going to talk about my love life. And instead she said, "Well, dear, I see you're seeing all these really miserable people. And they're very low, dear." And she said, "What they want is love. They want love." And she said, "Don't worry what all your supervisors and people tell you to do. Just offer them love and say what comes into your mouth." Now, I know that sounds rather radical, but that was the most powerful supervision I ever had because in my heart, I felt that psychotherapy was about heart to heart connection.
Yeah,
And it wasn't about getting into analyzing and going over and over these awful traumas and dramas, but actually helping people to connect with love.
yeah.
And so that, this is part of the new paradigm because in the old paradigm of the ego consciousness, it's very cognitive and analytic, and we're in our heads, and people aren't in their bodies at all. Whereas in the new paradigm, it's about coming from a heart space where we connect up, if you like, with source energy or our souls or our higher selves, whatever you want to call it. But we're connecting with the energy of the quantum field. And
But here's the thing, Ruthie. Now, this is fascinating because this is the path of joy, which is the opening account in the first part of your book. So that's going to amplify a lot of that for
yeah,
listeners who want to read more about the path of joy. That it's in the book. Now, this bit about entering a different realm of consciousness. Now, if I go for a massage, and people that I work with often ask this question. What's the difference between a transitory state and something more permanent? So if I go for a massage, I feel absolutely blissfully happy. I'm escaping. I feel very grounded. I leave whatever nonsense was in my head but Ruthie, it doesn't last. As
no,
soon as I leave the bloody place, it's the law of diminishing returns, right? Because by the time I get to a traffic jam or whatever, or someone annoying me, my quote serenity will begin to kind of lessen. So the question then I have is what creates a kind of robust transitory altered state? Does that make sense?
It does. Well, if we think of it vibrationally in terms of what's in the field or the unified field around us, because energy psychotherapy, where we're transforming all the trauma that's in the field, because all the traumas and dramas we've been through exist in the energy field around us. And people who are psychic can see sort of blobs and blots, creating dense frequencies. And what working with energy psychology does is we work with the nervous system and the subtle energy, and we clear it out of the system. We release that dense energy, which makes space to bring in more light into the body.
Yeah, I've got it.
You're getting rid of the dense energy of trauma and bringing in light. So when you go to your massage, you cleared all that dense energy and you've had some light and peace come in and you feel beautifully peaceful. Now, what you do with that state is say, okay, this is who I truly am. And the rest of the time, I'm in my ego state with all the traumas and dramas that I need to clear so I can spend more time in the vibrations of peace. But we can't do that until we clear all the triggers which are to do with trauma. So if you're in a traffic jam, it's stress, somebody cuts you up, it might remind you of some accident you nearly had. We're constantly firefighting with all this sort of flooding of daily
Yeah.
life. And it takes quite exceptional people to calmly go through life. I mean, I get pissed off in a traffic jam the same as anybody else. We're human, aren't we?
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is the more we clear the trauma and the dense frequencies, the higher the vibration becomes, the more we're accessing light and peace, and the easier it is to get into those states. And eventually it becomes a choice. It's like when we can take a step back and be aware, which is why mindfulness and awareness is such an important tool. It's like we can choose how we respond to a situation. Am I going to get triggered and pissed off because somebody's cut me up on the
Yeah.
road? Or am I going to take a breath and go and let it go? And I think the thing about maintaining that state on a more permanent basis is that it's 24/7 mindfulness and awareness.
Yes, no, that's beautiful. I really like that. Now, there's a concept of body, mind, energy. Now, just to set this in context, so what we're discussing, it's generally a techie, nerdy type question on my podcast that I tend to ask
That's
people
fine.
in this profession is what their idea of an integrative psychotherapeutic model is. So, is it holistic? And obviously, it is for you because you're bringing in the soma, the body energy. You're also embracing theories and bringing in different approaches. But it is also amazing, isn't it, that there's over 500 approaches in counseling and psychotherapy. Now,
There must be 500. Wow.
I think it's more. So, will anyone listening or watching this, they'll be probably asking, right? Do we need another one?
Well, evidence bases count for quite a lot. And energy psychology has the most impressive incredible evidence base. The Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology, which is an international organization, has a huge, huge scientific base. And energy psychology kind of comes out top with practically everything,
Oh,
It's effective, it works, it clears things like PTSD, it war veterans stop being triggered. It's very, very effective. And it works on the mind, it transforms the neural pathways, It transforms the endocrine system, it transforms the subtle energies, it calms the nervous system. So, and the other thing is that it's a self-applied method. It's not something we do to clients. It's something they
Yeah.
do themselves. So it's very, very self-empowering. And so it's not like we are healing our clients. They are healing themselves. We're teaching them methods so that they learn how to bring their system into balance and peace.
And these are the development maps that you talk about in the book, right?
Well, yes, but also the methods. So we teach people how to balance the system. We teach them how to get rid of energy blockages. We teach them to clear trauma through the central axis, which is the nervous system, and also through the meridians, which is in tapping. We help them to work with intention, which is from the heart, because intention itself is a very powerful tool. You know, if we set our mind to believe something, then we create our reality from that. So the energy psychotherapy training that I teach on teaches a variety of generic methods, which then trained therapists learn how to integrate into their existing practice. So this is a separate training on top of people's existing trainings.
Yeah, I really like that. The idea that there's greater intentionality that can help bring about greater purposeful behaviors. I mean, in couples work, that's always the case, where the great insights are when there's greater intentionality, the more purposeful someone's behavior is, the better their relationships. So that we don't take people for granted and we're more, we're purposeful and there's greater meaning in our relationships. Um, so Ruthie, I'm just going through some of the questions I had. If we just talk a little about theories
Mhm.
at the risk of staying in our heads and being sort of a bit
I don't
too
mind talking about theory.
intellectual about it. But what I kind of what really spoke to me was some of the systemic constellations work. So I was thinking of people like Bert Hellinger, and is that the right pronunciation? And then when we were talking about, and you reference Eckhart Tolle with talking about the changes from the egoic world and the third dimension. Where, what are you borrowing from in order to develop your sort of way of working?
Okay, so it's multidimensional from all sorts of sources. So I think that the idea about psychotherapy in a new paradigm comes from universal teachings about this particular age that we live in. It's taken about 100 years for us to move into the Aquarian age.
Yeah.
We're finally moving into the Aquarian age, which is an entirely new age. And as obviously everyone knows, we've got technology and advanced technology and AI and extraordinary new healing and methods are coming through, if you like, being downloaded.
Yeah.
And so, where somebody'd lie on the couch for 5 times a week to do psychoanalysis for, 100 years, now we can use energy psychotherapy and clear trauma much, much more quickly. So it's like a gift to humanity. And this method is really similar to the wisdom of the ancients, because obviously in the ancient practices of Tibetan Buddhism or any of those
Mm.
wisdom traditions, people would sit in caves for 30 years and meditate and clear their energies and work with their subtle energy. They'd purify their chakras, they'd, transform their channels and inner air and energy. And I mean, I used to practice on that path, and you'd spend hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years practicing. But what I'm so that's a background, So energy psychotherapy isn't new, it's just a new version in the 21st century. where we've been empowered with tools which are much faster and more efficient and more effective. So it helps people to be free of their trauma much more quickly.
Hmm.
And what we find with energy psychotherapy, you can still do long-term energy work and energy psychotherapy. It's just the same as normal relational psychotherapy, but we add these energy psychology techniques integrated within it to clear the trauma out of the body. So the most important dimension, which links with the new findings in neurobiology and so on, is that we have to include the body. I mean, everyone's heard of Van der Kolk, the body keeps the score.
Yes, but Ruthie, in the profession, it's almost like there's a cohort of people that are the new rock stars, right? So it's the Col Van der Kolk, there's Dan Siegel, there's Peter Levine, and is it Fisher, the Jemai, is it
Nina Fisher.
Jenny Fish? And it's almost like Esther Perel, I know in a different, slightly different from the body, like that's more coupled, but it's almost like there's a, it's like they're the new gods. And
Well,
is there a risk that it's personalities, not principles in the profession that yeah,
I mean, well, part of my book is entirely about the anti-guru model.
right.
So
I like that.
the core of the book is the guru is dead.
Right.
And if the wisdom isn't in the client, then forget it.
Hmm.
So no, we definitely are not interested in being rock stars. We're interested in helping our clients access their own divinity. So everyone can be a rock star.
And it's not the proprietary model because if you look at the other new kid on the block, the internal family systems, the IFS, not that I necessarily want to be a critic of IFS because I think it's very useful, but again, that's kind of like taking ancient wisdom and old other approaches, I think, in a way, repackaging and then telling therapists to come and train with them all from the start again, start over training. And
I think you're talking about the branding, which
right,
our course is specifically designed not to be a branded course.
right.
So we use the word generic. We teach the principles of working with energy psychology. And so we work with the chakras on the meridians. There are loads of chakra trainings you can go on. You can do AIT, or you could do this or that, or there are loads of intention trainings. You can do TAT, and uh, but we're just teaching the principles of working with the subtle energy system, whether it's meridians, chakras, or intention. Simply that. And we employ lots and lots of different methods. And the idea is that each person can use them and develop them in their own way. So the course is precisely not to be a branded course training.
I like the sound of that. Now, just on the back of that, when we're talking about, I'm just referring to my notes here again. So the soul-centered 5D consciousness. So let's just take a sense of the wider universal field currently
Yeah.
in this epoch of history, whatever we're in. I mean, the chaos, the wars, the brutality, the genocide is horrific, and the damage being done to the planet. So, when you talk about people accessing this third dimension and being more aware of the environment, at the same time, we have people in positions of power saying, drill, baby, drill. How in what has where is the power in psychotherapy to deal with the terrible negative toxic influences of our powerful people in the world today?
Well, I think that's a really, really important and good question. And basically we're going through the death of the old planet and the birth of a new one. And death and birth are very violent processes.
Mm.
So all the old hierarchies are being challenged and questioned. They're most ghastly at the moment, but they're also in their death throes because they're not going to survive. I mean, look at all the ways governments are collapsing and, the old systems don't work anymore. And we are giving birth to a new earth. So alongside the old structures coming down, and energetically, in terms of what's actually going on the planet at the moment, there's this vast influx of very high frequency photonic light. Are you familiar with this idea?
I think you're the expert on this.
So we're being flooded with this vastly higher frequency light. People talk about it called solar flashes, and it's
Mm.
awakening the strands of our DNA, literally, the vestigial, sleeping strands of our DNA, because originally we've got at least 12 strands of DNA, and people
Yeah.
talk about us only having two. So this light is awakening the codes in our bodies. And the planet is moving into new Earth. I mean, that's why a Catholic calls it the new Earth. And it's literally a 5D Earth with different frequencies. But they're talking about a sort of a divided planet at the moment where people are making choices. And if you're in the 3D, then you're into competition, you're into a sort of service to self, really.
Yeah.
But if you're into the heart, then you're more into service to other and the wider whole. And so as this light comes in, it is said that the planet is bifurcating and that there will literally be different worlds. That some people call it ascension. But what I understand by ascension is actually that we embody the light into our bodies. So to me, ascension is about being really grounded in the earth and bringing more light into our bodies so we connect up with all our other multidimensional selves.
Yeah. No, that was very, very well explained, Ruthie. So hopefully this follows on. Forgive me if it's a slight curve on what we were talking about, but when we're talking about accessing the numinous within ourselves, whether that's our spiritual selves, higher selves, source, higher self source, or the self, and for some that could be deity. But I suppose my question is, if you're working, trying to help someone who's coming from a very secular atheist aspect, how do you deal with the terminology of the numinous, the God within, to help that person? And how do you then help them access the idea of soul journeys?
Don't use that terminology at all.
Okay,
So, I mean, I've got loads of clients I work with, and I never use the word energy at all.
right.
I'll say, let's do some stress relieving exercises to help calm down your nervous system. That's exactly the same, but it's just putting it in that sort of language. But what I would use is what people usually and quite invariably say when you do what we call clearing of the trauma from their bodies and all this stress is released. The two most frequent things that people say is, oh, I feel peaceful or
Yes,
lighter. They feel
yes.
peaceful and they feel lighter.
The proof of the pudding is in how it tastes, yeah.
So they say peaceful and lighter. And so they're beginning to, and gradually you say, well, that's who you truly are, that feeling of peacefulness and light. That's your true nature. And you could call it the natural organic template of who we really are as humans with before all this trauma. And people are quite happy with that. But it's also about connecting with our sovereignty. It's like learning to trust our intuition and our inner knowing, which is our own voice. It's not like It's the opposite of the guru, where somebody else knows best. And that's one of the things that this work is very much led by the client. We absolutely trust that the client knows best, and we follow their process.
Yes, I like that. That's very. We will get on to talk specifically about your training, I promise. Just before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about expanded consciousness and that it's not about going higher, which I totally agree with. Because sometimes if you look at psychospiritual models or what people might term transpersonal models, the risk is that it can be perceived as very hierarchical.
Absolutely. No. Yeah, definitely. It isn't about being hierarchical.
Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, I'm a Bowlby therapist, attachment based, and Bowlby was talking about a secure base. And to my mind, if you take the sort of developmental issues of the energy centers or chakras, to my mind, the base chakra is the most important one. Because if you haven't got a solid, grounded, safe base chakra, everything else can topple.
And what's that chakra called?
It's the root chakra. It's the one at the base of the spine, and the root. So, to my mind, all most of the trauma in the first three levels, which is the root chakra, the
Yep.
sacral chakra, and the solar plexus, they're all about the ego's struggles finding survival in the world, really. And it's not until we really sorted out all our issues around family and struggling with our issues about power or powerlessness or lack of sense of self, or, getting obsessed with what sort of addictions. That's the
Yeah.
second. So we've sort of sorted all that stuff out, forget about the upper chakras. So to my mind, working on those lower three chakras is really, really important. And it's bringing the energy down. The more clear we are, the more we can bring the energy down into our bodies. And so it's not about one chakra being better than the other. It's about balance, so that all the chakras need to work in harmony and in alignment. They call it the line of the light going up the spine, which then comes to things like Kundalini awakening and so on.
Yes. And also, I'm just thinking of letting go of, I mean, from your Buddhist understanding, letting go of attachments in the material sense, and also your sort of veils of identity.
Yes, I mean, we need our egos to survive in the world. We're not talking about just sort of getting rid of ego and living in la la land. We have to be,
La
um,
La Land sounds great though.
but we have to honor our responsibilities in the world, don't we? It's like we have responsibilities, and we need to honor those to live in the world. And so that's why spirituality needs to be embodied. It's like we live life on earth with a spiritual outlook.
Yeah.
So we live with the idea of heart-based compassion, love, cooperation with others. We're not competing, we're helping one another, all that stuff. But we're
But
still living life on earth.
and absolutely. And Ruthie, present company accepted, of course. But in my experience, and this is based on working in the field a number of years, going through training, um, dealing with other therapists, renting rooms in places, there is so much toxicity. I know this might not sound popular amongst psychotherapists who can't communicate, who are obnoxious, and who are passive aggressive. So there's a disconnect there, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, it takes a long time to sort out all our narcissistic trips and, all our wounding, our narcissistic wounds. And that's why the work to be on the journey to enlightenment it's a lifetime's work. We don't stop and suddenly say, I'm sorted now. we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always developing. And there's a lovely Buddhist saying called "In the beginner's mind,
Mm.
everything is possible." I think it was Suzuki Roshi. In the experts, there's few. And it's the idea of having a fresh, curious approach to life where we don't really think we know anything. We're just curious and exploring. And, getting rid of our egos is a major job.
Yeah,
I mean,
not an easy task.
all working on it, I'm still working on mine, that's for sure. And at least if we know we've got one and that we need to work on it, that's a start.
But absolutely. But isn't it the case that we are drawn to other people's energies? I heard someone just on the radio this morning talk about we, it's like, excuse me, when people are on each other's wavelength, what it means is we're attracted to their energy. Their energy has some sort of symbiotic kind of
Like
connection.
attracts like.
Yeah.
It does, that's right.
I mean, you
And
see that. I mean, I see it. Sorry, you see that even just in everyday life. If you're going into a shop and someone sees you coming and they don't greet you or they just look away, and you just think, isn't it nice when you find people who treat you like a human
resonate,
being? Yeah.
resonate. Yes. Yes. And I totally agree. Yes. Although I
So,
have to say for myself, although ideally I would like to be really open, I think because I'm quite sensitive sometimes and quite private, I tend sometimes not to be as outgoing as I would like if I go to the shops, because I might just be in my own world a bit, and I've got stuff to work on with that kind of thing.
well, and I agree, and I'm certainly not going to set myself up as the best example of a customer service approach everywhere I go. But what I try to be mindful of is, am I treating others as I would like to be treated myself?
That's
So
right.
if I go into, I don't know, a CPD event and I don't get greeted, instead of thinking, well, no bloody person has said hello to me. Have I said hello to someone else?
Yes. Do as you would be done by. I
Hmm.
use that quote in my book, actually.
Oh, right. There you go.
You remember that from the Water Babies?
Oh, yes.
Do as you would be done by. And I just think it's such a profound and simple morality, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, Ruthie, with the bit we talked about before we started recording, we were having a little chat. And I suppose it's around this era of being in environments where you can potentially be subject to passive aggression. And I mentioned an incident where someone was yawning and someone else says, "Oh, are we keeping you up?" You made the point that yawning is a sign of empathizing, right?
Yes, I write about that in my book actually. There's this little thing in the head called the precuneus, which is connected with our higher self or our access to source, and also to opening up an empathic gate. And I think that I find when I work with energy psychotherapy, and I think you were saying the same, that you sometimes find that with some people you start yawning. It's a sort of indicator that there's an empathic field opening between you. So what I have to say to my clients when I first meet someone before they get to know me,
Yeah.
I say, I'm just needing to let you know that when I work, I sometimes yawn, and that doesn't mean I'm either tired or that I'm bored. It's
Yeah.
actually an energetic mechanism where the unified field, the quantum field between us is opening out, and that yawn is part of a connection.
And is that always well received?
Yes, people are very simple, and people like it because it shows that there's something real going on. I find if someone's traumatized and I'm working, we talk, 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 and suddenly I'll yawn and I'll know that's a cue. Ah, we need to go into doing actual trauma clearing work using energy psychology methods now. It's absolutely amazing cue for me. And clients, we all laugh now, you know.
Right.
It's sort of happy. It's like, oh right, the field is ready. It's ready for us to go into doing this energy clearing work.
Excellent. There's a
Or
piece,
clearing work.
I'm going to write something about this soon around every modality, every approach, every way of working seems to have this concept of seeking permission about moving on. Because if parts of us, to use parts language, are not on board and are not giving ourselves permission to address something, then the can be sometimes knocking on a door and it
Yeah,
goes unanswered, right?
that's right. There's a very important method that we use, in the toolkit in the book, there's a toolkit of all the different methods you can use. And one of them is called psychoenergetic reversals, which has been known about for many years now. And psychoenergetic reversals are when the energy is flowing in the wrong way towards healing. Freud talked about thanatos, which is like the death
Yeah.
instinct, and libido, which is the life instinct.
Yeah.
And when we're going backwards, people are in scapegoat mode, or they're in sabotage mode, or they're in negativity mode. They don't want to get better. And no matter what work you do with a person, if they don't want to get better, they're not going to get better. But
Mm.
we have this wonderful method. It's so simple. It's from EFT, where you tap on the side of the hand. This is a self-acceptance point, and you'd say, even though I have a block about doing this work, and part of me doesn't want to get better, and I'm scared that I won't be me if I get better, or I'm scared that I don't deserve to get better, even though part of me is blocking this work. I honor my feelings. And then you say something positive, and I love and accept myself.
Lovely. Yeah.
And just by doing that, you're shifting the work into a positive trajectory. It's amazing. Works
Oh, that's
so
beautiful. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Sue Johnston and I've heard her speak. She's worth checking out on EFT, right?
I mean, EFT is great. And I mean, then there's something called massive reversals, where, again, talking about family constellations, and sometimes you have a whole part, which is the whole body. And if a child has had a major road traffic accident when they were 5,
Mm.
their body might think it's dead still. And so the rest of them's trying to get on with life, but their body isn't cooperating because they think they're dead. And so you can work with massive reversals. You could do energy testing using muscle testing, saying, body, I'm alive. And the body will say, no, I'm dead. Body, I'm dead. Yes. And then you can do work, even though my body feels it's dead because of this road traffic accident. I ask for help in reversing this so that
Yeah.
my body knows that I'm alive and I love and accept my body. And then the body starts to realize and wake up and think, oh, okay, I'm not dead after all. And then it can start healing.
Do you ever, just thinking purely spontaneously, this is something I hadn't meant to ask you, but have you ever had any experience of, is it kinesiology?
We use kinesiology all the time in our
Oh,
work.
okay, right.
So we energy test. Kinesiology, we call it energy or muscle testing. Yes, we use it to guide the work.
Oh, well, a big shout out to my friend Roger in Sydenham, who, yeah, I've rented rooms in there in the Newlands Park, and he's a big fan of kinesiology.
Oh, it's fantastic. And the thing is, if you energy test the client in person, it's really empowering because they can feel, whether their muscle is it's yes or it's no.
Yeah,
They really feel their body guiding the work. It's really fantastic.
yeah. So, Ruthie, now here's your opportunity to tell us all about the training you're offering on the back of this book. So, who, what, where, how,
Yes.
over to you.
So all the things I've just been talking about, reversals, this one, energy testing, energy balancing, clearing through the chakras and everything. It's all taught on our course, which starts in September 2025. And it's a 1 year post-clinical training course. So everyone who does the course is fully trained and registered as a therapist before they start.
Okay. So
We won't
anyone
book
who's
anyone unless they're fully trained as a therapist
okay.
because it's an online training and there are 12 days throughout the year. And
Weekends or during the week?
it's usually Saturday. There are 2 weekends, one at the beginning and one at the end. And otherwise, it's just single days on a Saturday from 1 till 7. So it gives people the morning, Saturday morning, because people like to go shopping or do whatever. It works quite well. It's international. We have people from all over the world doing it.
Great.
And we use the Zoom system very well with breakout rooms so
Yeah.
that people actually, it's experiential training. So you don't do role plays, you actually work on your own trauma. And so to make it safe, we have facilitators in all the breakout rooms assisting couples and trios to do this work. So it's very, very experientially based. And we have supervision groups right from the beginning. So there are 10 1.5 hour supervision groups, which are uh, about 4 people in each group throughout the course to help people integrate their learning. And they work with clients, and we encourage people to introduce it into their work straight away. There's teaching a whole range of things. We teach people how to integrate it into depth psychotherapy. So no, we're not just teaching techniques, we're teaching how to integrate it, which is really important. So we teach about attachment trauma, complex trauma, transpersonal trauma, past lives,
Yeah.
pre-verbal trauma, in utero trauma, the whole lot, and different methods. And we do integration and consolidation. And then we have Phil Mullen, who teaches on the course as well. There's a fantastic team of teachers, actually, really good. Paul Kroll's one of them. And Phil Mullen teaches his psychoanalytic energy psychotherapy at the end, which is called PEP, which is used in a particular way. But we teach it from a state of presence throughout the training. So we do, we set the whole field up with intention at the beginning of each training day so that people can get into the learning flow of the quantum field. It makes a huge difference.
So this sounds great, but well, not that I don't mean to predicate it with a but if I just said and if someone is maybe so sometimes I get this from people that I work with where if an approach is more felt sense, working in present moment in more energy, the risk is that the person who has a lot of narrative to exchange and they want to tell you a story and probably want to hear themselves speak as well, they feel deprived.
That's why we call it energy psychotherapy.
Right.
So people come and they can talk. But you might energy test or muscle test, kinesiology, and we have different lengths of sessions. Some people really need to talk. So for some clients, I might do an hour and a quarter, which is like 1.5 times 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Might be like they do 50 minutes of talking and then we do 25 minutes of energy work to clear the stress out of and they're very happy with that. Other people want to just really clear trauma and we spend 50 minutes and some people do an hour and a half, some people do an hour. So you adapt according to people's needs.
Okay. That's
Definitely.
that's very reassuring for I think anyone who would have been maybe skeptical about
Oh,
something being overly felt sense.
it's so important for people to be able to talk. And sometimes it's not appropriate to do any stress relieving work. It might be just sitting with somebody
Yeah.
as they feel their feelings and just being with. So it's about doing what's appropriate for the person, and one size doesn't fit all. So we adapt according to each person's unique circumstances, really.
Yeah. Well, that sounds wonderful, Ruthie. How, if someone is listening or watching this who wants to get involved and enroll or find out more information, where do they go?
They go to something called Energy Psychotherapy Training Limited website. I think it might be energypsychotherapytraining.co.uk. And the website has all the details. There's a core training, and then there's a longer version where people do a certification where they carry on for another 6 months with more supervision and write up clinical case studies.
Right.
Energy psychotherapy training.co.uk. And they can also find out through me at the Flame Centre.co.uk if they can't get, if they get muddled up about it. The
Well, don't worry, Ruthie. I'll post the links to these
Oh,
sites and
thank you.
I'll have checked them, so that's fine.
Yes. And the other thing is there's a payment plan so that people can pay in installments.
Yes, because that's trying to be as inclusive as possible, right?
Yes, yes. Because people, people have different resources, don't they? But yes, we'll be delighted if anyone feels like doing the training. I mean, next one's starting in September the 25th. There won't be another one starting probably then until September 27. So it's like you get in on this one or you have to wait for a couple of years.
Yeah, oh wow, so it's a couple of years wait. And how many people will you hope to have as the cohort?
It varies. It could be anything from 20 to 25 people, maybe. That's about average.
And it'll be people from different approaches, modalities,
Different trainings, all different trainings,
but all therapists though.
all trained therapists. We
Right.
don't take anybody that isn't a fully trained therapist who isn't
And
a,
not if they're it's not like multidisciplinary, it's therapists, right?
it's therapists or counselors.
Okay.
It can be psychiatrists as long as they've got a psychotherapy training. It's anybody that's been trained in counseling and psychotherapy.
Yes, because it's so important for self-care, but due diligence and ethics, then that, you know,
To
you,
make it safe. I
yeah,
mean,
that you kind of know what you're doing. Yeah.
that's what people say about the training. They say it's very safe and we really think about safety.
Yeah.
Because people do a lot of learning and growing during the course, and they have major sort of transformations, actually. That's why the course is called Transforming Trauma.
Yes. Did just I'm just thinking whilst you're speaking about do you have much room for Dan Seagal's work, Window of Tolerance?
Oh, yes, we absolutely work within the window of tolerance, definitely. We teach it on the training. We teach
Good.
polyvagal theory, we teach the Dan Siegel, window of tolerance, all that stuff. We teach that as part of working with complex trauma and being safe. Yes, absolutely.
Great. I mean, that really speaks to people about, real, you're most vulnerable to stress when that window is narrowed, right? And the idea is good self-care, social support, getting into your flow state, building that resilience and expanding that. I mean, I think people really get that when you try to talk to them about it, right?
And we use these methods called energy balancing so that when people get triggered, it helps them to get into those flow states.
Right,
So we use particular methods using energy testing. So it's like you're doing that to check, is someone in balance? That thing I just did there is a way of
right.
testing. Is my system in balance or is my client system in balance? And if not, we do various balancing exercises. So we don't do any work until the person is in a place of balance. So yes, Dan Siegel's window of tolerance is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
we integrate a lot of different theories and, the concept of repetition compulsion, for example.
yeah,
The idea
yeah,
trauma repeats itself. So we find the earliest time when that trauma happened and connect it with when it's happening in the present. And that helps to clear the pattern out of the cells of the body.
yeah. I'm sure it'll be very successful. Is this the first year it's going to be
No,
run?
no, no, no. We've been running it for years, actually. This is the
Where have I been?
it's the fourth iteration of this particular one, but we've been teaching versions of it since about 2010. So it's nearly 15 years we've been teaching it.
Oh, great. Ruthie, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. It's been just wonderful talking about these topics. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you might want to talk about?
Oh wow. Well, I think I would like to wish everybody well on their journey, whatever that is, and um, a prayer for peace to the world.
Amen to that.
Apart from that, come and do our training, or have
Absolutely.
a taster, have an experience of it, so that you know how amazing it is. Because
Yeah.
once you've tasted it on a personal level, you kind of you suddenly get it. You have to experience it to know it, don't you?
It's such a truth. It's it's like if you're assured of some, well, it's like anything in life, though. I mean, to invest in anything, whether it's a commodity or your time or a hobby, I guess everything has a risk because you have to believe and set an intention. If everything you did before you invested anything, you were assured of the process, then I don't know, that would make it just a bit too simplistic. But sometimes there has to be a leap of faith and you have to do something and then you get the benefits and then you know what people are talking about, right?
Yes. What we find is that people that come to our training feel like they found their tribe. Because there are a lot of people out there that are wanting to integrate a more kind of open-hearted spiritual approach alongside really grounded, solid, earthed psychotherapy. So we kind of managed to kind of bridge that span of sort of bringing in source energy, but it's a very grounded, down to earth course, safety, grounding, boundaries, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's people often say it's not just about energy psychology, it's about how to work with people in all their states. Um, anyway, I really appreciate you inviting me to talk on this
You're
podcast.
very
Thank
welcome,
you so much.
Ruthie. It was great chatting, and I wish you all the best with the training the uh and with the book.
Yes,
And
and here's my book if anyone wants to buy it. And just so that people know about the book, it's in two parts. The first part talks about energy and our spiritual awareness and
mm,
so connecting. And the second part is a manual, really, of how to. And it's got all the sort of different methods that we teach on the course, how to apply them. It's got all the protocols in there. It's got case examples. And the book ends with a sort of contemplation about where is therapy going these days. This is hence psychotherapy in a new paradigm.
yeah,
We do have a lot of clients coming to us these days, people like star seeds and people who are awakening and have a different experience of reality. They are opening up. And we think it's important that all psychotherapy trainings take that on board.
yeah,
Lots of therapy trainings don't have any either they don't have any body component or they don't have any spiritual component or both. And so that's why we think it's really important to be really integrative of body,
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, and to be truly holistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks
Thank
again, and no doubt we will chat again another time. And for now, Ruthie Smith, thank you very much for coming.
thank you, Noel. Thank you very much. Bye for now.